This time we'll have our President's panel on stewardship. Give us just a moment to make the change here. We're so glad to have Dave Ramsey, CEO of Ramsey Solutions, Grant Gaines, pastor of Calvary Baptist Church, Jackson, Tennessee, Rachel Cruz, author and speaker, Ramsey Solutions, Nick Floyd, lead teaching pastor, Cross Church, Northwest Arkansas, and Mike Glenn, pastor, Brentwood Baptist Church, Brentwood, Tennessee. Guys, thank you so much for being here, and I just appreciate your participation in this. And we're going to take just a second and ask these guys a little bit about stewardship. Dave, I want to start with you because you're really probably the reason we're all up here talking about stewardship. You've made this kind of a life matter here for you. Tell us, how would you define financial stewardship?
You know, as I said yesterday when I was speaking, I came to Christ as an adult, and I always heard stewardship in the church. I never heard it anywhere else. And after I got to looking at it, it really is an old English term. It's not really a Bible term. And of course, King James is where it came from. And where we are, and then we all picked it up and Christianized it. No one in the mainstream talks stewardship. No one uses the word anywhere else, except a few of the environmentalists will use it occasionally. So stewardship simply means a steward in feudal England, feudal English times, was a manager, someone who managed the lord of the realm's property. And so all a steward is we manage for God. The earth is the Lord's and the fullness thereof. And I quickly had, even as a young Christian, an immature Christian, I quickly had an experience where I realized as a manager, I felt a responsibility, a different kind of responsibility, to manage someone else's stuff better than I would manage stuff for myself. And so there's a nobility when you say stewardship, when you say I'm managing it for God. All of it, not 10%, not a love offering. All of it is His. And every morning I get to get up and set it all over there again, every part of my life, the influence, the power, the money, whatever it is, I get to set it over there and say, it's yours, God. Now, what do you want me to do with it?
It's so good. We don't own anything, do we? That's right. That's a great way to look at it. Rachel, we're so glad to have you on this panel. You are the rose among the thorns here, all right? Thank you for being here. And this is Dave's daughter. How do you believe that financial stewardship, whether it's poor or good, how does that affect marriages? I know you've done a lot of research on this. How does it affect marriages and families?
Yeah, it has a great effect on marriages and families. We just actually conducted a study with 1,000 U.S. adults, and we found, which is interesting, the generational gap of marriage. So those who had been married 25 years or longer, only 43% of them brought debt into their marriage. And we found people who were married 5 years or less, 86% of them brought debt into the marriage. And so when you're talking to younger people within your congregations, it's amazing, this younger generation, or I say younger, millennial generation, because we are the most indebted generation in history. And so now when you look at the total financial landscape of families across America, the average family owes $15,000 on their credit cards. The average car payment is $592. The average college student is now graduating with $36,000 in student loan debt. And so you hear all these statistics and these stats, and what I picture in my mind is just not numbers, but they're people. I mean, these are single moms who are dealing with this. These are young married families. These are 50-year-old couple who's been working for decades trying to get out of this mess. And so what we've found is the stress level and anxiety level rises and the amount of marriage fights, everything escalates when couples have $30,000 of debt or more. And sadly, that's the reality today for most Americans. And so just all of that and then trying to be married is hard enough. And so being able to work together with your spouse is key. But again, sadly, the effects of it is that it's one of the leading causes of divorce in America. And so we have found that couples who can work together and communicate and respect each other, hear each other out, have empathy with each other on this subject, they go so far. And then when you add kids into the picture with families, parents, it's always my charge to you to step up to the plate in this, and that it is your responsibility to teach your kids how to handle money God's way. It's your responsibility. The church needs to partner with that absolutely along the way, but there is a responsibility for parents, and sadly that's been lacking. Again, because of now the studies and the results have shown that we're the most indebted generation. So I hate to sound like Debbie Downer up here with just all the drag, but this is the state of where we're at. And so I think part of just naming that and seeing that helps us build a plan to say we can get out of that and we can be different, and don't let your past mistakes dictate your future. So the way you've done marriage this long, if it hasn't been great with money, you can change that. If you've been a parent who hasn't talked to your kids about money, you can change that. And that's the beauty of all of this. It can seem so hopeless, but there's so much hope in the midst of it.
I've been a pastor for 35 years, and I did not know until your father taught us this, and then I started looking at the research, and it's true, that the number one cause of divorce in America is not sexual immorality or infidelity, but it is arguing over finances. When people argue over finances and they don't agree on finances, it affects virtually every part of their lives. And so I just appreciate the research you're doing on that. And Dave, I'm not just saying this. That is one of the biggest things that helped me say, I'm going to get involved in Financial Peace University. I'm going to get involved in helping marriages come back together and not be fussing over money because they've got a plan. And the guy that introduced me to your stuff, Dave, is my son right here, 2 guys over away from me. We'd been out hunting, and we were on the way home, and we were just talking. He said, Dad, he said, I'm telling you, I've got some really good stuff going on in my church, our young couples, but not just them, but all of our people are really responding to this. So, Grant, I want to ask you, I love to hear you and Nick preach. These are two of the finest preachers, and Mike's a good preacher too, but I like these young boys too, And but Grant, when you preach, do you mention financial stewardship? If so, does that ever bother you a little bit, talking about money? How do you do it? How do you work that into your sermons? I know it's in the biblical text, but talk to us a little bit about that in preaching.
Well, obviously, they can be a controversial issue, because sometimes you'll hear people say that I don't like the church because all they talk about is money. But like with anything else, if you're committed to being an expository preacher, which is what I want to be, and not just preaching on the topics that you're picking, but if you're preaching the text of Scripture, it's not going to take very long for you to preach on this topic, because it's all over the Old Testament, it's all over the New Testament. Jesus talked about it more than almost any other subject. And I think the reason for that is it is just an integral part of what it means to be made in the image of God and what it means to be made to be a disciple of Jesus. So I think that in a fallen Genesis 3 world, every area of our life, every area of our world is bent not toward order, but toward disorder. And we're called to bring every area of our world and of our lives under dominion, to take dominion over that and to bring order to the chaos. And so it's certainly true in the area of finances. I think it's something that tends toward disorder and chaos, and we're meant as image bearers of God to take dominion over that area of our life. And then as followers of Jesus, our goal is to observe all that he has commanded us. And he has commanded a lot of things about finances and money. And so as you preach the text of Scripture, I think it will naturally come out in application. But we also look for other ways to teach it through classes. We've taken groups through Financial Peace University as well.
Amen. Nick, considering the fact that Jesus did speak frequently about finances, why do you think some Baptists still are hesitant about speaking about it? I know that you at Cross Church, you guys are really getting involved in Financial Peace University. Talk a little bit about that, but why do you think it is, just like Grant was saying, Why is it that some pastors and maybe even some church members have a hard time maybe talking about this?
Yeah, as Grant alluded to, it's a controversial subject, and I think all of us have seen the abuses of it with prosperity gospel and preachers like that, and so in some ways we run from that, and there's probably been an overcorrection by many pastors, even in our convention, of we don't want to be that guy, and we don't want to be that church, and so we've neglected the call to disciple our people, and so you alluded to, we're following the lead of Bellevue, where we've offered financial peace semester by semester for years across our church, but we're going more drastic in the fall. We're taking our entire church through it. Every small group at our church will go through financial peace, and as part of the preparation process that Ramsey's people kind of lay out for us is that you take your staff through it and your leaders through it. We took our pastoral staff through it in the spring, and this is fascinating stuff. In 9 weeks, our pastors and staff of our church paid off $90,000 worth of debt and saved $46,000 collectively. And so when I heard that, I thought, we're about to set the church free. Like if it's making this big of a difference in our pastors, then this is going to massively affect our church. So thank you to Dave and Rachel for what they do.
Mike, you and I are a little bit older, and we've been around the place a little bit, and we understand a little bit about how debt can just devastate people's marriages and their walk with the Lord. Talk a little bit about that. How does excessive debt with an individual Christian affect their walk with Jesus Christ?
Well, if you're not careful, you can end up in a situation where somebody else is telling you what to do with your money, and you're not free to do what you want to do. And what we have found out, young Christians, the very first question that they will have is, what do you mean I have to tithe? Because that will be the first thing that, okay, I'm following Christ, now what? Well, you need to tithe. Well, where am I going to tithe? Then you start taking them through Financial Peace University, putting the budget together, and they tell you, I don't have the money because I'm paying this, I got to have that. And we found it's one of the fastest ways and the most effective ways to help people confront their idols of things, making decisions in their life that they don't know they're being controlled by. And by the simple process of putting a budget together, they can find themselves not only financially free, but spiritually free and available to do now what Christ wants them to do without any hesitation or limitation.
You know what's interesting too, I've seen over the years, the number of people whose careers change or accelerate like double as soon as they get out of debt, because they were making a decision to stay in a toxic environment because they had to pay the bills. They were putting up with garbage off of somebody because they had to pay the bills. And when I'm speaking to a large mainstream audience, I'll often say, pretend you come in Monday morning with no debt at all, and the boss starts chewing you out and cussing you and yelling at you. You just start walking off. Where are you going? Don't have any payments. And the whole place cracks up, and I said, see, what you just realized was you were in slavery, and in that example, I set you free. You were not in slavery. And when you're not a slave, you don't have to try to serve two masters. And all of a sudden, it changes their income because it changes their career choices and sets them free. It's pretty, the economics of it, of the spiritual principle, are pretty amazing.
We've got a lot of pastors looking at us today, and they're wondering, okay, yeah, you guys talking about finances and all that. How really am I going to encourage the people at our church to go through a class like this? Most people have heard of Dave Ramsey. Most people have heard of things like this in other times, earlier. But tell us, Dave, how can churches implement this in their church? One of the things that we appreciated about it so much at Bellevue is this. It was so easy when you got the materials. You're talking about showing videos. You're talking about, it's not something that they have to memorize and all that, but if they can just click on the video and all, tell them a little bit about what it's like to implement this in their church and how that is made possible.
Well, I think your point is the big thing that we work really, really hard on, so thank you for that, and that's just to make it easy, make it turnkey. And so we can deliver a system for the whole church to go through. We can deliver, obviously, a single class, those kinds of things. But, you know, what happens with pastors and what we've done over the last 30 years working with them that we've discovered more than anything else is that the leadership team has an aha moment. And they go, okay, this is really not about money. This is really about lordship. This is really about who's in charge. And this is really about marriages. And this is really about 25% of the people that attend these classes don't go to this church. It's about evangelism. And so you start realizing there's an opportunity to lead people in the community of the Lord by serving them in a felt need. There's an opportunity to touch and heal marriages. There's an opportunity to set people, you know, deal with the idols and set the lordship thing in place. And then it doesn't really matter if it's Financial Peace University or Dave Ramsey. That part doesn't matter at all. What really matters is are we centering on the gospel, and are we presenting the gospel in almost a side door way that's winsome, that the culture can sink its teeth into. And, you know, it's fishing, baby, and you set the hook, right? And you bring them into the kingdom, and you walk them through exactly what's going on. I got an email the other day. It was beautiful. A lady was an atheist that was attending one of the classes, and her car, a single mom, her car got totaled, and she didn't have insurance, so she's riding the bus. And she sat down in the class, and other people were sharing how some of the financial problems they were having. And these are the cool people. They looked good, but they were opening up and being real and saying, we have this problem in our marriage with the money, or we have this debt over here with the student loan. We can't seem to get Sally Mae out of our house, and, you know, that kind of stuff. And she said, well, everybody else was sharing, so I just thought, I'll just tell people I'm a single mom and I'm riding the bus because my car got totaled. And a guy sitting across the table from her pulled the keys out of his pocket, took the key off the ring, and said, there's a Nissan sitting outside, it's yours. I'll bring you the title tomorrow. And he gave her a car. And if you don't think that lady didn't meet Christ within 3 weeks of that, which she did, but I mean, you talk about something that's a tangible expression of the gospel, and people are set on fire, and the opportunity to minister to each other in those situations, that to me is the exciting part about it. It's not a Dave Ramsey thing for sure, and it's not a Financial Peace University thing, but for a guy to sit across the table like that and go, here's your car, darling, and she goes, who does that? I want to know more about this Jesus, this guy that's inside of this guy. That's the most powerful kind of generosity, outrageous generosity, and that kind of witness just gets me every time.
The other thing that happens, Steve, you're talking about the pressure of debt in a marriage, that when the husband and wife sit down and start becoming partners and working with each other instead of against each other, and they see how well they work as a team in accomplishing this, then it gives them confidence to talk about the other aspects of their marriage. And so one of the things that we see is a deepening of the trust in each other and the deepening of that teamwork in the marriage, because they had the excuse to get serious about talking about their money.
I think
Talking about money. Oh, I was going to say, it forces you also to look long term. And as I talk to couples, it's amazing how we get so bogged down with the tactical day to day, right? You get up, you make breakfast, get the kids ready, get them out to school, you go to work, you come home, feed them, bath, down, you know, it's just this constant motion. And when couples can sit together, just like you were saying, Mike, and actually talk about the future and dream, suddenly there's this new spark in a marriage even of like, okay, what do we want to do as a couple? Like, what is God calling us together to do? And it's amazing how we can run on separate tracks so easily, but once you force your money and combine your money, all those conversations open up.
You two guys are pastors. You've got small children. I want both of you to tell me, how are you trying to train your children when it comes to financial stewardship, either one of you?
Yeah, it honestly, it happens in the small moments of life when they get a $10 bill from grandma and grandpa, you know, for their birthday. It's, all right, now we need to teach you how to tithe, so you need to give $1 to the Lord and your church tomorrow. And so for us, it more so happens in the small moments of life, although Meredith and I have talked about when our kids, you know, ultimately get engaged and get prepared to be married, we think a great requirement, I got 3 daughters and a boy, I think a great requirement for all 3 of my one-day son-in-laws would be to go through FPU with my daughters to make sure that they're on firm footing, for sure.
one of the things we want to do is we want our kids to catch the vision and get excited about why we give. That it's not just we want to be good stewards, but that we get to give to some awesome and exciting things as Christians. So just for an example, before this week, we had Vacation Bible School at our church, and we always take up an offering, and the boys and the girls who can take up the most money, and it all goes to missions. And so our third child, Camille, she's 4 years old, was standing at the front of the sanctuary and just weeping during the Vacation Bible School opening ceremony. And I went over there and said, "Why are you crying, Camille?" She said, "I don't have any money to give to the missionaries." And so I went out to my truck and emptied all the coins I could find, in my truck and gave it to her. And she wanted to give toward the missionaries. And so putting out there also the goal of some of the things we're giving to and helping our kids get excited and being driven by the mission of the Great Commission and funding the Great Commission, I think is an important part of that.
Rachel, you want to add to any of that?
Sure. I think a huge part when it comes to parenting is that more is caught than taught. And so as parents, I know a lot of people I talk to, they say, well, who am I to teach my kids about money? Because I've made mistakes. I'm living paycheck to paycheck. I have all this credit card debt. Who am I? And I always look at them, I'm like, you're their parents. Like, you have the most highest example in your children's life, especially the smaller they are, to weave in these life principles day to day. And we even talk about, teaching them so tactically even, like having 3 envelopes, giving, saving, and spending. And they work. If they work, they get paid. If they don't work, they don't get paid. You put them on commission, not allowance. And once they earn money.
You say if you work, you get paid. If you don't get paid?
Is that in the Bible?
Wow.
Yes. Yeah, and they start to learn the concept, right, of where does money come from. And when your kids, and I know we probably all experience this having young kids, but when they earn money, they give it differently, right? They save it differently, they spend it differently. And so there's just this element to them taking a little bit of that ownership as a young child. And the great thing about that too is that when they make mistakes, they're making small, very inexpensive mistakes under your roof and your protection. So that way when they go off on their own, they don't have to make these huge, giant mistakes that they've never experienced before. And so there's just such a huge weight, I think, of teaching them that and getting in the tactical as well.
Mike, our churches are very similar. You've done such a great job at your church. You've got one of the largest churches in Nashville that reach a lot of people for Christ. And when we started doing Financial Peace University, I thought it was just going to be younger couples. But man, we found out that we had a lot of elderly couples that did not know how to manage money and that were in trouble. And a lot of them got out of debt. They got free and all that. Have you seen anything like that at your church?
As the baby boomers got into it, as they didn't recover as fast as they thought they would out of the economic downturn of 2008, a lot of people got into trouble. And especially in an area like Middle Tennessee where the illusion of having it together is very important. We have had a lot of people start drowning in that and have to go back and do the basics again. Listen, you guys know this, nothing's changed in this, so let's go back and do the basics again.
Dave, if you were on an airplane and you were about to land and some guy said, "Hey, I just now recognize you. Can you just give me a synopsis of the process of FPU?" I mean, just a real quick, Mr. Ramsey, would you give that to me? Tell me a little bit about what's the plan, what's the strategy, how do I start? Because the thing I love about FPU is there's a starting point and there are steps. Would you just give a very simple explanation, if possible, of those steps in Financial Peace University?
God's and Grandma's ways of doing things work. It's common sense. But common sense is so rare now that having it is like having a superpower. So all we do is just show people how to get out of debt, how to get on a budget so that they can be outrageously generous, how to live on less that they make so that they can retire with dignity. A godly man leaves an inheritance to his children's children. We help you get control of one of the most out of control areas of people's lives, and that's this issue of money. Personal finance is 80% behavior. It's only 20% head knowledge. It is not a knowledge problem. It's the guy in my mirror. If I can get the guy in my mirror to behave, he can be skinny and rich, but he likes chocolate cookies.
Would you just tell him, I want to hear, tell me about the little fund that you come up with first, and then also the snowball thing. Would you just share those two things, the emergency fund? And I heard you share a testimony one time when you and your wife first did this, and I think, I may have the illustration wrong, but I think you guys needed some money to repair a transmission or something, and when you paid that and you walked away and you said, and you paid cash for it, and it was like you had money, you didn't have to put it on a credit card, and you looked at her and said, what did we just do? Do you remember that? Did I remember that correctly?
Oh, absolutely. Well, the emergency fund's an old financial planning thing. It's been around. Every financial planner in the world's talked about it for 100 years, and your grandma talked about it. She said, have a rainy day fund. You know, because why? Because it's going to rain. Dave, you need to be positive. I'm positive it's going to rain. You need a rainy day fund. You need some money set aside for when things come. They're coming at you. Get ready. And so when you've got that fund, one lady called it her GOK fund, or God Only Knows fund, because God only knows what next is coming, you know. So you got a little pile of money there, $5,000, $10,000, $15,000 that you built up, which sounds like a fortune to most people, but it's pretty easy to build up if you don't have any payments, and we'll walk you through that. And we finally got there. We had like $10,000 saved up after we lost everything, and I was driving. Y'all remember those old blue Astro vans, like the two-tone, unbelievably ugly redneck Astro vans? I had one of those, and I didn't know that the little circle around the D meant overdrive. And I pulled the boat in overdrive. And I didn't know that if you did that, it would fry the transmission and smoke would fill the entire cabin of the van and the children would scream, we're all gonna die, we're all gonna die. But I found that out. And so, so we took the Astro van down to the mechanic and he goes, it's gonna be $1,700. So we put a transmission in it. And it was the first time in our married life, we've been married over 10 years at that point, the first time in our married life we'd ever taken a car in for a major repair that we didn't have a car crisis and a financial crisis. We just had a car crisis. And we were driving away, like you said, and we had just fixed the car. And it turned, you know, having that emergency fund turned a crisis into an inconvenience. It took the drama out of it, the hyperbole out of it. And we're, you know, hillbillies, I'm a drama queen, man. Everything's drama. And it was just like, is that all there is to it? We just fixed the car? Is that what rich people do? They just fix stuff? I thought you had to have a meltdown financially and go try to figure out and, you know, clean out the nickels out of the couch and everything else every time you had a problem. And it was weird. It was a different kind of experience. It's kind of where we got that name financial peace from, you know, two words that don't go together, like airline service and, you know, and so, you know, we just, you know, but I had peace. And I went, well, that's what God's talking about. You know, when you walk in my ways, there's peace, a peace that passes understanding. And of course, that's referring to the salvation issue. That's referring to the Spirit of Christ. But also when you walk in His tenets and His methodologies, it walks you into a peace and so forth. The debt snowball was just a thing we dreamed up. We started figuring out, again, this was behavior issues, not math stuff. And so we taught people just pay off the smallest debt so you have a little victory. And you go, yeah, one down. And then you pay off the next one, you go, yeah, another one. And by the time you do the third one, you're like, this is working, I got this. You know, you're starting to get your confidence and your hope up rather than on this subject that's just been shaming you and beating you down and condemning you. And you're like punching back. And by the time you get down to the bottom, you're just like, wow, Rocky, you know, we're knocking this thing out. And then people start arguing with me about it. Now, I'm a math nerd. I got letters and licenses after my name at mathematics, you know. But I'm doing this, the math is wrong. Because I'm not paying off the highest interest first. I'm paying off the smallest debt first to get that victory. And people are like, well, Dave, you know, that's not mathematically correct. And I'm like, darling, if we were doing math, we wouldn't have credit card debt. You know, it's not a math issue. This is a behavior issue, and you fix a behavior problem with a behavior solution. And so then, you know, I've been doing it for years, and everybody's been criticizing me and all this stuff. I get all these blogs written, all this stuff. And then Northwestern University decides to do a study on it, and they come out, and then it gets published in Time magazine. The title of the thing was Dave Ramsey was right. It's like, we already knew that. You know, we had 10 million people already done it. We didn't need your study, but I guess that validated it. So there you go.
We've got just a few more minutes, and I want us just to take just a second, and if you will, and I'll just let anybody who wants to take this, if you had one financial principle, financial stewardship principle, and I know that let's don't mention the same one, every one of you, okay? But what would you recommend to somebody if you were going to talk to them about finances? What is something that has been special in your life? Anybody want to take that and run with it? What one financial stewardship principle has been really meaningful to you personally?
Ladies first.
Oh, thanks. I would say the quickest way to gain traction and to get control of money, especially if you feel out of control, is being intentional, and that's doing a budget. And that's coming from me, who I am naturally a spender. I'm kind of a free spirit, so the idea of doing a budget did not come natural to me, even though his blood is in me, right? Like even though I'm Dave Ramsey's kid, it did not still come natural. And so I learned after doing one, especially after I got married and doing it with my husband, and we did it over a few months, I suddenly realized that a budget is not constrictive, it's not cheap. Like I always thought, if you're on a budget, you can't have any fun. But a budget really is permission to spend. It really gives you this value system that you get to say, okay, what do I value with my money? I value giving, I value saving, I value paying off debt, I value this and that, and we can cut things, and suddenly you have a game plan and a roadmap of where to go, and you win so much faster financially. And in Luke it says, don't build a tower without first counting the costs, lest you get halfway up and you're unable to finish. And so know what you have, and know the state of your flocks and your herds, it says in the Old Testament. Know what you have, and a huge part of that is knowing, putting it down visually, and having that game plan. And you win so much faster doing that versus if some idea is just in your head and you're kind of just guessing.
And then taking that budget and having a monthly meeting with you and your wife, you and your husband, where you sit down, have the budget, and everybody knows where we are. And it's the team and the budget working on the money, and it's not you and her and you and all that. So,
You're becoming one. That's right.
Exactly right.
All the data points tell us that the couples that work together win, and the ones that don't. I mean, very few people get out of debt and build serious wealth that the couples aren't working together. You're pulling along a princess or you're pulling along a prince. One of you is going to be immature and out of control. It's going to be a long life. But the data points say that when you get two grown-ups that know how to delay pleasure, and they decide we are going to have a shared goal in the future, and they use the budget to do that, all of our data over all these years, these millions of people, we've got all the data in front of us, says those couples are the ones that achieve unbelievable financial success.
And the answer becomes, we decided.
Yeah.
Not, you won't let me spend the money. It's not, no, honey, we decided.
There's no more fussing over double standards and all that. Yeah.
Yeah, I think the dominant principle I'd say is when you give to God first, He has a way of working everything out. And especially when you implement the principles that Dave and his team have put together, it's a win-win issue every single time.
Yeah, and I would just say I think the fundamental issue for me that I try to help our people understand in our church is that really when it comes to giving, 100% of what we have is already God's. And so giving is really just, keeping less of God's money for yourself and using the rest of it for the way He wants you to use it.
That's powerful, yeah. I would say that, I was jumping in on his, but mine is the thing that I've seen that causes people to win, use these tactical processes that we're talking about to do it, is you need a really big why. Simon Sinek's book, Start With Why. Why am I doing this? And the number of couples that are 28 years old that come on and do a debt-free scream on the show, I say, when did you start this? When we had our first kid. It got serious then. They had a big why. We got to change our family tree. We got to take care of this baby. Now we got to be adults. And all of a sudden the game, why? Lady the other day, she said, 8 years ago I got dry of alcohol and drugs for the first time in my life. I was 41 years old, and my why was to get the finances under control, so I never had that pressure, and I never had the temptation to go back into substance abuse again. And so you got to have a why. You got to have a sense of nobility. And for me, my why was stewardship. It was, I want to serve God. I want to be faithful with the little things, and I want to be found to be a good and faithful servant. And so that's a higher calling than I'm saving for a car. That's a higher calling than I want to go on a vacation. You can do those things. There's nothing wrong with those things. It's a higher calling than the emergency fund or the college fund or the retirement fund. Those things you ought to do. They're all wonderful things. But when you can set it all on the altar and say, I'm doing this as an act of worship, that's a high calling and a sense of nobility. And if you get a big why like that, a big higher calling, I'm doing this for the kids. I'm doing this so my family will never be broke again. I grew up poor. I'm not going to be poor anymore. My family's not going to be this way. The cross is going to change the trajectory of our family tree. A godly man leaves an inheritance to his children's children. I'm going to change this family tree. When you get something like that burning inside of you, you'll do the tactical stuff. You'll find the ways to work together. You'll find the ways to do the budget. You'll find the ways to get stupid credit cards cut up and out of your life. You'll find the ways, but you need a big why.
You know, I think one of the things that personally that has blessed me by using your materials and all, Don and I love to give to other people.
Amen.
And we do it a lot of times anonymously, but I get a kick out of giving. My mother was a big giver, and boy, I tell you, she would just give all the time. When we had her funeral, I don't know how many people came up and said, you know, my house burned down, your mother bought us all new furniture. My daughter, you know, I didn't have enough money to buy my kids clothes, and my daughter, your mother bought all my kids clothes. I just heard, dozens of people told me how much she did for other people, and it just put in my heart I wanted to be a giver. And I thought, you know, if I can't get my finances in order, if my outgo exceeds my income, my upkeep becomes my downfall, and so I'm going to get all this stuff figured out and just do it God's way. And now what I do, every time I get a paycheck, I keep a little cash with me all the time. And I believe you would say this is true, Dave. I believe that every prompting to give is from the Holy Spirit.
Amen.
Because I know that I'm too sinful to do it if it was up to me, and the devil didn't tell me to give. So I believe with all my heart it's God's will every time he prompts me to give. And the good thing is, if I get to heaven and God says, Gaines, you just gave too much, I can handle that. But I don't think that's going to happen. And I want to say this to you, if you have not thought about going through Financial Peace University, I want to encourage you to look into it. I have worked with these guys now. I don't make any money off of this. I am not a salesman. I am a satisfied customer. I have seen hundreds, yes, thousands of people at our church get set free. Don and I have become debt-free. It is a great way to live. And I just want to encourage you to think about this. If you're fussing and you're arguing about finances, if people are doing that in your church, it doesn't have to be. Dave talks about the fact that money it's fluid. It's going to flow somewhere. But when you start channeling that and aiming your money and doing it God's way, I'm telling you, you will offer people the chance to be free. It's not about just you getting more money for your church. That's not really what it's about. It's about helping people become free. And Jesus said the truth will set you free. And we've got a lot of people, even in the ministry, that are in bondage. You say, well, I don't make as much as other pastors. That's not the issue. The issue is, are you doing it God's way? This doesn't matter if you make a lot of money, lower money, whatever. Just do it God's way, and God will get the glory, and you will get to live in a way that other people don't live. You can live and give like you've never lived and given before. Let's thank the Lord for this panel. Thank God for Dave Ramsey, and thank God for all that they've done. Amen. Thank you guys so much. Amen. Dave, would you just lead us in a word of prayer before we go? And just, we're going to go to we got one more section to go with our meeting. But would you just lead us in a word of prayer and just think about all these pastors and folks here? Just pray for them if you would you?
I'd be honored. Before I do that, Steve and I have been friends a while, and I've watched him these last 2 years. And I got to tell you, I admired you before, but the work ethic that you have poured into this position of president, and the servant leadership heart, and the power, and the firmness and the gentleness simultaneously, I've been in awe watching you. You are a world-class leader. God, we thank you for the pastors that are here. We thank you for the attendees, the members that are here. Father, we thank you for people that are searching after your heart. God, we ask that your Spirit right now just encourage them, lift them up, for there is therefore now no condemnation for those that are in Christ Jesus. Regardless of what the outside says, Father, we know that we know that we know who we are. And God, I just ask that you use your Spirit at this moment. I reach for the hem of your garment on their behalf to heal tired bones, to heal tired spirits, to lift them up and encourage them, remind them why they got in the ministry, and give them that zest again. The ones that have the zest, Father, go ahead and pour some extra gas on that. And God, we just thank you. We thank you for men and women that serve you like these people. It's been an honor to be among them this week. And we ask you bless them beyond their wildest imaginations. In Jesus' name, amen.
Let's thank the Lord for Dave Ramsey being with us. Amen.